My daughter called out for mommy again, and again on her deathbed, while Grace was scrambling for concert tickets for her first love. She never imagined that, when she stood in court to defend her first love, the plaintiff would be me, her husband, and the father of our deceased child. Ethan, will you ever stop? I told you, don't call me tonight. I need to get tickets for Julian, he's been wanting to go to Justin's concert for ages. Don't bother me, no matter how big the emergency. Faced with Grace's furious scolding, I tried to appease her repeatedly. Years of her long-standing dominance in our relationship had instilled a deep humility in me. Grace, please don't hang up, can you just take a video call? Lily was in a car accident, she wants to see you one last time. My wife scoffed. One last time, what new trick have you two come up with? Ethan, is this how we're raising our child? Mommy, on the hospital bed. Lily struggled to speak. As she opened her mouth, bloody foam seeped from the corners of her lips. My heart ached, and tears streamed down my face. I quickly wiped the blood from her small face. Don't be scared, Lily, mommy will be here soon. Grace paused for a moment, then burst into laughter, quite convincing. Playing dead, are we? Just go disappear somewhere, don't bother me. Faking death to trick me on my birthday, how unlucky. Before I could explain, she hung up, my hands trembling. I tried calling again, only to find I had been blocked. Lily's small hand weakly lifted, trying to catch my sleeve. Daddy, it hurts so much, I want to see mommy. In her tiny hand, she still tightly clutched a small clay doll. It's Lily's birthday gift for mommy, but mommy hasn't received it yet. The heart monitor's frequency grew slower and slower. The doctor sighed, shook his head, and left the room. Wiping away my tears, I frantically tried to contact Grace. No matter what, I desperately wanted Lily to see her mother one last time before she passed. But when I sent a text, I only got a single reply from Grace: if I don't get those concert tickets, you two are in for it. Watching's hopeful eyes dim little by little, I slapped myself repeatedly. Consumed by regret, I am useless. It's all Daddy's fault for not taking good care of you. Lily's large eyes were filled with grievance. Where's mommy now? Is she with uncle? Why won't she come see me? She sobbed, as tears streaked her dirty face. My heart clenched, and I couldn't bear to look into her eyes. Julian was the idealized love of my wife's life. They had a passionate romance since college, then went abroad, and they broke up. In all the years Grace and I had been together, getting married and having Lily, I thought she had long forgotten Julian, but to my surprise, Grace had never forgotten him. From the day Julian returned to the country, Grace became noticeably preoccupied. She started coming home later, and another figure began appearing frequently on her social media feed. Lily and I repeatedly tried to get her to return to our family, but she saw it as merely a means for us to compete for her attention. Even after hearing Lily was in a car accident, clinging to life, she refused to come and see her for herself. Watching's breathing grow fainter and fainter, I knelt by her hospital bed, calling her name again and again, but I could only watch helplessly as she stopped breathing, until her very last breath. She was still calling out for mommy. I held Lily's cold body and sobbed aloud. My phone pinged. I picked it up, and saw Grace had just posted on her social media feed. Finally got the tickets. Got to listen to my favorite songs with the most important person. At this moment, I am the happiest person in the world. Staring at the frigid word happiness on the screen, I felt a chill run through my entire body. What did Lily and I even mean to her? After loving her all these years, it was time I woke up. Grace got her tickets and left by plane early. I was left alone to arrange Lily's funeral. Just days ago, my daughter was full of life and energy. Now she was just an urn of ashes in my arms. When dawn broke tomorrow, she wouldn't hold my hand and playfully whine, saying she didn't want to go to school anymore. The lights in the room remained off. I sat in the darkness, crying until my tears ran dry. I didn't know when dawn broke, but Grace suddenly called me. Ethan, what have you been doing all day? Lily's teacher said she didn't go to school today. Can you even be a proper father? When I didn't respond, her scolding grew more intense. What else do you do besides using our child to gain my favor all day? I truly regret marrying someone like you. If anything happens to Lily, I swear I am not done with you. She ranted on. then slammed the phone down. She scolded me with such self-righteousness, as if she were the most devoted mother in the world. Yet, on Lily's birthday, she was accompanying Julian to an interview, when had a fever and was sick. She took time off to go on vacation to Miami with Julian. Even before Lily died, she begrudged even a shred of concern, caring only about whether she could go to the concert with Julian. I pulled out the divorce papers that had been sitting in my drawer for a long time. It was time to let go. After making up my mind, my next step was to avenge Lily and find the hit-and-run driver. When I rushed to the police station, the officer told me it had rained heavily that night. The streetlights on that section of road were broken, and the video footage wasn't very clear. It would likely take some time to identify the hit-and-run vehicle. My heart twitched as I thought of the night Lily had her accident. That night was Grace's birthday. Lily had prepared Mommy's birthday gift early, but she waited until dark, and Grace, who had promised to come home, never showed up. While I was clearing the table full of dishes, she secretly ran out. A little girl of 5 or 6, how could she know her way around? The rainy night was dark, and the roads were slick. Somehow, she ended up on the highway. By the time I realized Lily was missing, and went out to look for her, the tragedy had already occurred. Grace was right. I didn't take good care of Lily. If I had divorced earlier, and told her sooner that her mother no longer wanted this family, perhaps wouldn't have died. I walked out of the police station, and looked up to see a video on the large screen of the building across the street. It was a recording of Justin's concert, bought by fans, during the chorus. The camera panned across the audience. Face after face flashed by, then lingered on a man and woman passionately kissing. Looking at that all too familiar face, I finally gave up all hope. I sent a message to Grace, let's get a divorce. I should have made this decision long ago. After I sent that message, Grace replied instantly for the first time, Ethan, what do you mean? I didn't have the strength to argue with her. I raised my hand, took a photo, and sent it to her. It was a photo of her and Julian kissing on the big screen. Isn't this what you've always wanted? There was a long silence. Finally, Grace called me, Ethan, I know I've wronged you, but I still love Julian, and I can't break up with him. You want a divorce? I agree. But the child has to stay with me. Lily is my flesh and blood. Since you can't take care of her, let me do it. What a responsible mother, isn't she? I suddenly found it absurd, and asked her, you say I can't take care of her, but where were you that night when I called you? Why wouldn't you answer the video call? Do you have any idea how much Lily wanted to see you? Grace said impatiently, I was alone at the law firm. Are you suspecting me of cheating and being with Julian again? I already told you, I still love him, but I haven't slept with him. We're completely innocent. It was truly laughable. Even after kissing Julian, and preparing to divorce me, for him, she could still self-righteously claim to be innocent with Julian. I clutched the urn in my arms. You can't take Lily. She's my child, and you don't deserve to be a mother. Grace grew agitated. What do you mean? Let me tell you. I am the best lawyer in Midland City. If I want custody, I'll definitely get it. Her voice turned menacing. Don't say I didn't warn you. If you want to fight me for the child, be prepared to leave with nothing. Listening to her threats, I almost laughed aloud. Custody. Lily is already dead. What custody do you think you're fighting for? Grace froze. What do you mean? Explain yourself. What did you do to Lily? She pressed me repeatedly, but I hung up, leaving her with only one sentence, you'll never take her away. A few days later, Grace rushed back. Julian stood beside her. They acted intimately, completely disregarding onlookers. Upon seeing me, Grace scoffed, "You're quite good at deceiving people. I already asked Eleanor, and she said Lily was just sick and didn't go to school. You and Lily have played enough of these little games. You're going to corrupt the child. After the divorce, I'll make sure to raise her properly." It was then that I remembered to spare Eleanor's feelings. When my mother-in-law called to ask about Lily, I had casually made up an excuse to brush her off. I hadn't expected Grace to mistake it as me trying to trick her. I pulled out the divorce papers I had been carrying with me these past few days, and tossed them to Grace. Sign them. I was already exhausted. I didn't want to deal with her anymore. Grace glanced at me, her eyes openly full of mockery and sarcasm. "I'd like to see what act you're putting on now, after so many lies." aren't you just trying to get me to come back? Since you like to play games, I'll play along to the end. You get this divorce whether you want to or not." As she spoke, she opened the papers and examined them carefully. Grace was a renowned lawyer in the province. If I had tampered with the papers, it wouldn't escape her notice. After flipping through a few pages, she frowned. "Why is there no mention of child custody?" I looked at her calmly. "Lily is no longer with us, so there's no question of custody." Julian, standing nearby, couldn't listen anymore. His face was filled with impatience. "Can you stop bothering Grace? Look at yourself right now. Don't you look like a clinging dog?" He continued to insult me, while reaching out and shoving me. I hadn't rested well in a long time, nor had I eaten much. With that push, I immediately fell to the ground. Grace's face hardened. "Are you trying to fake an injury now?" She disdainfully swept her gaze over me, but then her eyes suddenly froze. Innering's attempts to stop her. She rushed to my side, and picked up a piece of paper from the ground. "What is this?" "A death certificate." She read it over, and over again, her hand trembling as she held the paper. She looked up and asked me, "Lily's death certificate? This is fake, right? You're lying to me, aren't you? What's going on?" Julian tried to step forward and help her up, but Grace shoved him away. Grace gripped my arm tightly, her long nails digging deep into my skin. "How did you get something like this? Did you pay for a fake certificate? Where's my child? Make come see me." I pulled my arm free from her grasp, and looked at her coldly. "Grace, the esteemed lawyer, can't you tell if this death certificate is real or fake?" Hearing my words, Grace swayed, and collapsed to the ground. She looked up, her expression venomous as she stared at me, her voice sharp. "Ethan, is this how you took care of our daughter? Tell me, how did she die?" I looked at Grace, who was behaving like a madwoman, my voice calm and steady. "How did Lily die?" "In a car accident." Grace froze in place. Julian, standing nearby, instinctively shivered. I looked at Grace and continued, "Before died, she only wanted to see you one last time. What were you doing then?" Grace blinked her dry eyes. She remembered that phone call from that night. At that time, she had said, "Just go disappear somewhere, don't bother me." Grace whimpered, and a pained wail escaped her throat. Julian quickly stepped forward to comfort her, comforting her while simultaneously scolding me. "What kind of father are you? Lily was so young, how could you not take better care of her?" He spoke self-righteously, as if he were the nominal father. Grace was crying uncontrollably, leaning against him. Hearing his words, she turned and questioned me. "Ethan, I entrusted our daughter to you before I left. Is this how you took care of her?" As if something had occurred to her, her words were laced with venom. "I know what this is. You hate me for falling for someone else, so you took it out on our daughter. You killed her. The murderer." She pointed at me, the hatred in her eyes almost palpable. "I won't let you, the murderer, get away with this. I'll make sure you go to jail." I let her rave, and calmly picked up the divorce papers from the floor and handed them to her. "Now you should be certain there's no custody issue, so you can sign." Grace signed the papers with trembling hands. As helped her out the door, she didn't forget to hurl one last threat at me. "Ethan, I will use every ounce of my legal knowledge to make you pay for Lily's death." Hearing this, a glint flashed in Julian's eyes. Then, he patted Grace's shoulder. "Don't worry, I'll always be by your side from now on." Watching them so deeply in love, I only felt that I must have been blind before. Why didn't I get a divorce sooner? Why did I have to wait until I lost the most important person to finally realize? As I stepped out, Grace was getting into Julian's car. They drove off without a glance back. I glanced at it, and suddenly felt something was off. Like a lightning bolt striking, my hands trembled, and I quickly pulled out my phone. The blurry surveillance footage had been sitting quietly on my phone. I opened my phone, dragging the progress bar again and again, comparing it repeatedly. Finally, I discovered a clue. With trembling hands, I dialed the police station. I think IVE found the real culprit. The police, having received the lead, quickly arrived. They reviewed the community's surveillance footage, and took it back for repeated comparison. Meeting my pleading gaze, the officer sighed and tried to reassure me that video footage is really too blurry. The chances of a match aren't very high. But rest assured, we will do everything in our power to find the culprit. Perhaps it was Lily's protection from beyond. But the police station soon had good news. The two cars were extremely similar. They could open an investigation into Julian. However, soon after the investigation began, they encountered resistance. Julian claimed that on the night Lily had her accident, he wasn't driving, he was at home drinking, and he had a witness, Grace. My chest felt constricted, and waves of anger surged through my mind. He's lying. I remember clearly that Grace was working late at the law firm that night and didn't go to his place at all. She committed perjury. The officer I had grabbed quickly tried to calm me. We investigated, and Grace said there was no overtime at the law firm that night. She was worried something might happen if Julian was drinking alone at home, so she stayed with him all night, and the officer said with difficulty, the law firm's surveillance cameras were out of order for a while. No one can prove Grace is lying. I gritted my teeth and asked him, since you can't prove whether Grace was at the law firm that night, shouldn't Julian's alibi be invalidated? An older officer sighed. As you know, Grace is a renowned lawyer in the province. With her connections, it would be effortless for her to fabricate an alibi. I swallowed the bitterness in my throat. I never imagined that Lily, who received no love from her mother before she died, would, after her death, have her own mother defend her murderer. I couldn't accept such a result. The officer, taking pity on me, advised me, you can sue directly. If it gets big enough, even Grace won't be able to cover it up. As he spoke, he kindly provided the necessary documents. I thanked him, and took the documents. No matter what, I had to get justice for Lily. Thanks to my relentless efforts, the matter was finally brought to court. When I learned that Grace was Julian's defense attorney, I was enraged beyond measure, and called Grace. Grace, do you remember why you studied law in the first place? You used to say, under the banner of justice, righteousness is eternal. But what are you doing now? To save Julian, you've betrayed the very principles of law. You don't deserve to be a lawyer. Have you even considered how innocent the person Julian killed was? Don't you feel any remorse? Grace scoffed. I haven't even settled accounts with you for Lily's death, and you dare to come looking for me. My heart twisted in agony. Lily also died in a car accident. Have you ever considered that? Before I could finish, Grace interrupted me. Her voice was as cold as iron. You're not going to say that Julian killed Lily, are you? Ethan, a person full of lies like you, why don't you just die? You're the one who deserves to die. Why was it my Lily instead? Her emotions flared, and she began to roar on the other end of the line. Someone rushed over, and quickly calmed her down. Grace, ignore him. The most important thing for you now is to rest well and handle your case. I recognized that voice instantly. It was Julian. It seemed that ever since Grace and I divorced, they had gotten together. Grace was told to rest, and Julian took the call. With me, he revealed another side of himself. I advise you not to waste your energy. Grace will definitely stand by my side. Waves of hatred surged through me. I wished I could reach through the phone and make Julian pay for Lily's life. That night, the person who hit Lily and fled the scene was you, wasn't it? Perhaps fearing I was recording for evidence. Julian paused, then spoke with a sneer. I didn't hit anyone. Your daughter just had bad luck being born your child, and let me tell you, Grace is the best lawyer in the province. With her on my side, I advise you to drop the appeal early. Don't end up ruining yourself. Julian couldn't conceal the smugness in his voice, and why would he worry? With, blinded and misguided, acting as his shield, what did he have to fear? I hung up the phone, my heart aching with throbbing pain. Even if it costs me my life, I will bring the murderer to justice. Before I got dressed and went to court, I held Lily's urn and wiped it again and again. On the urn was Lily's black and white memorial photo. She was still smiling, so innocent and pure. My heart felt like it was being sliced by a knife. Mommy is going to defend the person who killed you, but don't be scared, Lily. Daddy will always protect you. Before leaving the house, I ran into Grace again. She was startled when she saw me, then scoffed. Just as I thought, you're like a persistent ghost. You actually followed me all the way here. I was dressed in black, holding Lily's urn, and didn't speak, as her gaze swept over Lily's smiling face on the urn. A hint of moisture flickered in her eyes. I'll bring Lily back. A person like you doesn't deserve to be a father. Julian nervously averted his gaze, and quickly pulled Grace inside. The courtroom doors opened. Grace, full of confidence, took her place at the defense attorney's table. This was her battlefield. No one had ever defeated her here before. Grace was brimming with confidence, believing it would be easy to clear Julian's name this time, but the smile on her face vanished the moment I walked towards the plaintiff's bench. Grace shot to her feet. She looked at me, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Why you? How can you be standing there?" I looked at her, and asked softly, "Grace, the esteemed lawyer, you can now begin to defend the person who killed your daughter." The courtroom doors closed. Grace was petrified, and stumbled back into her chair. She kept mumbling, "How is this possible? That night, that road, how could it have been Julian?" Julian panicked. He had put all his hopes on Grace, counting on her to get him off the hook. Seeing in such a state, he couldn't sit still. "Grace, don't be like this. We're in court now. Let's handle the case first." Grace seemed to snap awake. She pushed Julian's hand away, and stared intently at Julian. Did you know all along that it was my daughter who died?" Julian's gaze flickered, the guilt on his face impossible to hide. He lowered his head, still struggling. "The dead are dead. They can't come back to life. Grace, we need to look forward. I told you I'd marry you." Seeing him like this, what more did Grace need to know? She looked at her own hands, then suddenly covered her face and began to laugh. "So, the one who killed my daughter was actually the person I loved most." As she laughed, hot tears streamed from between her fingers. Julian wanted to try and persuade her again, but seeing Grace's frantic state, he didn't dare to speak. Grace seemed to remember something. She flipped through the documents in front of her, which detailed the car accident. She cried as she read. Lily was wearing a yellow teddy bear pajama set. It was so obvious. Why couldn't you see her? Why? She had internal bleeding. If she had been taken to the hospital sooner, she definitely would have recovered. But you, of all people, ran away at that moment. Just a little bit more, and my daughter would have lived. Why did you do this? She was distraught, and grabbed the documents from the table, fiercely hitting Julian with them. Julian was still counting on her to help overturn the case, so even though his face was scratched with several bloody marks, he didn't dare to retaliate. The court clerk couldn't bear to watch any longer, and quickly pulled her aside, telling her to calm down. But how could she calm down when faced with the truth of her daughter's death? After being hit a few times, Julian grew impatient. Before, Grace had always worshipped him, and fawned over him. When had he ever been so humiliated in public? "Don't you dare act crazy here. If you hadn't said you were lonely at the law firm, I wouldn't have driven there to keep you company. Now look what happened. What are you doing pretending to be so innocent?" Grace looked at this strange Julian, and for a moment, she was frozen in place. She knelt stiffly on the floor, muttering repeatedly, "I killed Lily. I harmed her." Seeing that the defense attorney was no longer coherent, the trial was forced to be suspended. I turned to walk out, holding the urn, but my sleeve was suddenly clutched tightly. I looked down, and saw Grace, her face soaked with tears. "I beg you, let me see her one last time." I forcefully peeled her fingers off, one by one. "Grace, how do you have the nerve to face Lily? Why did she run out that night?" "It was because she wanted to see you." I spoke each word clearly, to engrave them into her heart. "It was your birthday that day. She waited for you for so long, but you never came. That's why she secretly ran out." As my words left my mouth, Grace's face grew paler and paler. She instinctively covered her ears. "Stop talking. Don't say another word." I forcefully pulled her hands away, and pressed on, step by step. "Is still burying your head in the sand. Julian is the murderer, but does that mean he not? When wanted to see her one last time before she died, how cold-blooded she was. If she had cared even a little bit about Lily, she wouldn't have even bothered to verify it. Lily's dying regret has haunted me ever since. How dare they? How could these two murderers think a casual "I am sorry" would make everything disappear?" Shaking off Grace, I got into the car with the urn. Lily's funeral hadn't been held yet, until I saw the murderer brought to justice. I couldn't lay my daughter to rest. With that thought, I started contacting some friends again, asking them to help me find evidence. I had to make Julian pay. While I was busy with all of this, Grace, at some point, had returned home. She stood blankly at the door, trying the passcode over and over again. Seeing me, she didn't shy away, but just stared blankly and asked, "Why did you change the lock?" "I can't get inside." Her tone was utterly flat, just as it had been before Julian reappeared. Watching her deceive herself, and pretend that nothing had happened, I scoffed. "Home? Have you forgotten? This isn't your home. How can a place without Julian be considered home?" Those were words she had said during another one of our arguments. Ever since Julian returned to the country, she started staying out all day, every day. At first, Grace would use too busy with work as an excuse, but eventually, she stopped pretending. "What kind of home is this? Just looking at you annoys me." Recalling her own words from the past, Grace's face paled. She opened her mouth, as if to explain something, but then weakly closed it. "Move, I am going in." I looked at her coldly. There was no warmth left in my heart. She numbly moved aside, making way for me. As I closed the door, she suddenly squeezed inside. She was already inside, and I couldn't just throw her out. I could only watch as she scurried around the house, as if searching for something. "Where's Lily? Where's my precious daughter? Where have you hidden her?" She couldn't find her anywhere, and just clutched me, demanding answers. I pulled her hands away from me, and pointed to the memorial photo displayed in the living room. "She's right there. She's watching you. Now you want to look for her. She waited for you at home so many times. Why weren't you willing to come home and see her back then?" I pulled her, and stood her in front of the memorial photo. Pointing to the clay doll placed in front of the memorial photo, I asked Grace, "Do you know what this is?" "This is Lily's birthday gift for you. She secretly prepared it for a long time, asking me to enroll her in a craft class." She was clutching it tightly until her very last breath. I picked up the clay doll from the memorial table, and smashed it hard on the floor. Clay shards flew, shattering completely on the ground. Grace panicked. She quickly reached down to gather the pieces of the doll from the floor, not even caring when the edges of the pottery cut her hands. I watched her hands, covered in scratches and blood, but she seemed oblivious. I asked her, "Can you put this clay doll back together? Can you bring our daughter back to life?" Grace couldn't take it anymore. She knelt on the floor. I looked around the room. I had been so busy with Lily's affairs these past few days, that I hadn't tied it up at all. On the wall hung a family photo, but beneath it was Lily's memorial photo. Once, our family was considered a happy one in the eyes of others. Grace, a lawyer, had always been a career woman, prioritizing her work, and I had been content to be a house husband. But gradually, she started to resent me for only focusing on the mundane of daily life. She said I wasn't romantic. After returned, she changed her heart without hesitation. Seeing our once happy family reduced to this state, Grace finally felt regret. She choked back a sob and asked me, "Ethan, if we live a good life together, can we go back to how things were? Can we forget the pain of the past?" I closed my eyes briefly. "Grace, I gave you many chances. For a period of time, she often worked overtime, worried about her health. I stewed some soup at home and took it to her. I intended to surprise her, but instead, I witnessed a scene that twisted my heart in agony. Her so-called overtime was actually just an excuse to flirt with Julian during work hours. Her colleagues around them, seeing their intimate interactions, began to tease them, asking when they would get back together. Only then did I realize that Grace had been telling people she was single outside of our home. She concealed the existence of Lily and me, just to get closer to Julian. I gave her some dignity, and didn't expose her on the spot. Instead, I went and had a private talk with Julian, hoping he would respect boundaries, and not interfere with my family. But to my surprise, Grace found out. She rushed to the cafe, and threw a cup of boiling coffee in my face. "Ethan, if it hadn't been for Grace going abroad, I never would have gotten together with you." She stood in front of Julian, adopting a protective stance. At that moment, it felt as though I were the third party interfering in their relationship. I had wanted a divorce then, but I came home to see our young daughter, asking repeatedly when mommy would be back. My heart softened again, but what did my kindness get me? I looked at Grace, whose face was etched with regret, and told her, "Between you and me, only Lily remains as a bond. You want to go back to the past? Fine, then bring Lily back to me." I grabbed her hand, pulled off her wedding ring, and tossed it into the trash can. I told her, word for word, "Grace, you don't deserve to be Lily's mother. nor my wife. Ignoring her pleas, I dragged her out of the house. She clung desperately to the door frame, refusing to let go. "Ethan, don't you want me anymore?" As she spoke, a look of pain appeared on her face. She clutched her stomach with one hand, and fine beads of sweat appeared on her forehead. "I think my stomach ulcer is flaring up." Grace usually had a high-stress job, and had developed stomach issues right after graduation. Back then, I was incredibly anxious about it. I'd make her porridge daily to nurse her back to health, and always kept her medicine close at hand. If she so much as frowned, I'd feel worse than she did. But now, seeing her like this, there wasn't a single ripple of emotion in my heart. If he's sick, go to the hospital. I didn't care if she was faking it or truly ill, and coldly closed the door. "Does your stomach only bother you when with me? Did it never flare up when you were partying all night with Julian?" Grace opened her mouth weakly, unable to utter a single word. After driving Grace away, I began preparing to sue again, while also arranging Lily's funeral. A strange number called. I thought it was a lawyer my friends had found to help, but when I heard the voice, I realized it was Julian. On the phone, he was furious. "Just tell me how much money you want. Do you have to cling to me like this? Ethan, your daughter just had bad luck. Why blame me for it? Let me tell you, even without Grace's help, I can still pay my way to win this lawsuit." I clenched the documents in my hand, and sneered, "If he's so sure you can win, why are you calling me?" Julian was stumped by the question. He couldn't think of a reply for a long time. He then erupted in anger. "You have no money and no power. How dare you fight me? You just wait." With that, he slammed the phone down. I touched Lily's memorial photo, and silently vowed, "Don't worry, Daddy will definitely get justice for you." Somehow, Eleanor learned about Lily's death. When I went to the cemetery to choose a burial plot for Lily, Eleanor appeared before me, with Grace. "Ethan, our family has wronged you." As she spoke, 2 streams of murky tears ran down Eleanor's face. A lump formed in my throat, making it impossible to speak. In all the years Grace and I had been married, although our relationship wasn't good, Eleanor had always treated me like her own son. Every time Grace and I argued, Eleanor would try her best to mediate, and scold Grace for not considering my feelings, even would sometimes complain, wondering who Eleanor's real child was. So when Eleanor rushed forward, embracing the urn and weeping uncontrollably, I didn't push her away. I just stood there, silently wiping away my tears. Grace appeared at the doorway at some point. She leaned against the doorframe, her gaze fixed on Lily's memorial photo, her hands still heavily bandaged. Seeing her appear, Eleanor froze for a moment, then gritted her teeth. "How dare you show your face here? What right do you have to see my child?" Grace began to sob. "Eleanor, I truly know I was wrong. I wronged Lily, but had no desire to see her." She pointed at the door. "Get out. Just get out. How could I have raised a daughter like you? You've brought ruin upon our entire family." Grace was about to say more when I stepped forward, took out my phone, and pressed play. "Ethan, your daughter was just unlucky." Julian's voice rang out, and Grace froze in place. I forced her to listen to the entire recording, then I told her, "If you truly feel guilty, then get revenge for your daughter." As I watched a new spark ignite in her eyes, the hatred in my heart intensified. I leaned in and whispered to her, word for word, "Don't you want to see your daughter? Don't you want to apologize to her properly? Then trade Julian's life for hers?" Hearing my words, Grace finally came back to her senses. A flicker of struggle crossed her face. Watching her hesitate, I scoffed. Even now, she still couldn't let go of that scumbag, Julian. I wanted to see who was more important to her, her daughter or her first love. "Are you still deluding yourself? If you hadn't been able to help Julian with his lawsuits before, do you really think he'd care about you?" I opened my photo album, and showed her the pictures I had saved. Originally, I hired a private investigator to find dirt on Julian, but I accidentally stumbled upon photos of him in bed with other women. "Grace, do you think he loves you?" Looking at the photos, Grace's face turned ashen. It was only at that moment that she realized what she had truly lost, all for a scumbag like him. She had lost her own child, and brought ruin to her family. She bit her lip hard, grabbing my sleeve for confirmation. "If I put Julian, the killer, behind bars, will you let me see Lily?" I nodded. Everything you said before about reconciling, about going back to how things were, I can consider it all." A flame of hope ignited in Grace's eyes, and I sneered inwardly. Nothing is more cruel than to give someone hope, only to snatch it away. How could she possibly think I'd still have any feelings for her after losing our daughter? When saw Grace by my side in the courtroom, he visibly panicked. He couldn't understand why Grace, who had previously sweet-talked, would now choose to stand against him. "Grace, I know you resent me, and I am truly heartbroken about Lily." Julian put on an act, even pretending to wipe away tears. But he didn't know that the moment he lowered his head, Grace's face twisted into a disgusted expression. She had already seen the man's true colors. How could she possibly soften? Seeing remain unmoved, Julian grew desperate. He lowered his voice and warned her, "Don't forget, you provided my alibi. If you recant your testimony now, your life will be over too." Grace merely stared coldly at him, with no trace of her former love in her eyes. The trial began, in front of everyone. Grace personally overturned the alibi she had provided for Julian. She used every bit of her legal knowledge, pulling out all the stops to get Julian put away. No one knew Julian better than she did. She unearthed all the evidence he had hidden, finally securing his conviction. Faced with a 10-year sentence, Julian collapsed onto the floor in despair. I took the verdict and left alone, without waiting for Grace. That evening, Grace called me. Her voice was soft, just like it used to be between us. "Husband, why didn't you come pick me up? I am exhausted." I suddenly laughed out loud. "Grace, how can you still be so foolish? What makes you think I'd ever truly forgive you?" Grace's voice froze abruptly. What are you talking about?" I spoke softly. "You'll never see your daughter again in this life. You and Julian, you both deserve to burn in hell." I heard a chair clatter to the floor on the other end of the line. Grace quickly stood up. "Husband, stop talking nonsense. I am coming home right now. You and Lily wait for me there." I hung up, unwilling to listen to her nonsense any longer. All that talk of reconciliation and mending what was broken, it was all a lie to her. Even the photos of Julian with other women were fake. Grace had personally caused our daughter's death, so I wanted her to personally destroy everything she held dear. She would never find me. I had already sold the house and even secretly changed the cemetery where our daughter was buried. I wanted her to live with guilt for the rest of her life. The station announcement sounded, and I boarded the train, holding my daughter's memorial photo, leaving the city forever. Later, I heard from acquaintances that Grace had looked for me for a long time, but she could never find me, or where our daughter had been buried. She cried constantly, saying she couldn't even light a candle for Lily, because she had committed perjury as a lawyer for a criminal. She was fired from her law firm, and blacklisted in the industry. Eleanor refused to see her anymore, and had long since moved back to her hometown. The once dazzling Urbnite was now barely clinging to life. The next time I heard about her, Grace had been taken to a mental health facility. A staff member had tracked me down as her ex-husband, asking if I could help. They told me that Grace was now mentally unstable, spending her days staring blankly at a patched-up, broken clay doll. Whenever she saw a 5 or 6-year-old girl, she would rush over, claim to be the child's mother, and try to make them come home with her. Passers-by mistook her for a child abductor, beat her badly, and then she was taken to the police station. Seeing the photo sent by the staff, I felt not a single ripple of emotion. Those who commit evil deserve their punishment. I explained my history with Grace to the staff member, and they sighed deeply. From that day on, the phone never rang again.